What advice would you give to your younger self? We've posed that question over the years to literally thousands of budding real estate investors, those that are applying to my Apprentice Program. And so for this video, I've compiled those answers to summarize what I've learned from all those people answering the question, what advice would they give to their younger self? So what do you think the number one answer is? Turns out this answer, or a variation thereof, is mentioned 70% of the time, 7 out of 10 people. And by the way, this is an open-ended question we've asked, and so people can answer anything, not simply a predefined set of answers. So what do you think number one is? Get started now. Get started sooner. Get going. That's the advice that they would give their younger self in regards to real estate investing. Get started now. In fact, many would also mention things like, I'm now in my 40s, I'm now in my 50s. If I would have gotten started in my 20s, I would not even be working now. And all those other what ifs. But the key piece of advice that literally 7 out of 10 people would give to their younger self is to get started in real estate sooner, to get started now at the time they're giving them that younger self advice. Now, they've also added in many cases things like don't procrastinate, or don't overanalyze, don't wait, or don't be fearful, just get started. And that's where I find it to be so interesting. So these answers have these additions to them. So why would people be telling their younger self, almost like they're shaking their younger self, get started? Why are they doing it in that fashion? Well, it's pretty simple, right? It's very easy to procrastinate. It's very easy to push things off. It's very easy to be fearful and to not move forward. In fact, right now, I got a lot of feedback on my previous video about real estate investing in 2023, and many people said, I'm just getting hammered with all kinds of information of people that are saying that the real estate market's going to collapse. And so there's that fear, right? And so let's say, for example, your younger self was getting started in real estate in 2011, right? And then there's all the fears because we were just going through the bubble bursting, and the fact that real estate would never come back and it would always be a failure, right? So there's always a fear or some reason not to get started. And so that's why so many people's advice to their younger self not only says to get started, but also says don't wait, don't procrastinate, get going, get going, get going. And I find it kind of humorous too, because you look at what people have thought through on the subject of real estate, and oftentimes they're kicking themselves that they didn't acquire that property sooner, and they didn't. It's almost never that they look back and say, man, I really wish I wouldn't have acquired a bunch of real estate 20 years ago. Man, was that a bad idea, right? So get started now. So if that's where you're at right now, you've been watching a lot of videos, you've read books, you want to get moving, but there's something holding you back, get started now. Think of your future self coming back to you in the present and saying, please get started. Okay, great. All right, so number one, get started now. But interestingly enough, there's usually a second item that they add. Not only, of course, overcome their fears and just move forward, but also there's a second item which was mentioned almost 50% of the time, and that's their number two answer. So can you guess the number two answer, which usually joins this one, as to the advice to your younger self? Get a mentor. So it usually says in the advice to their younger self, get started now and get a mentor. Learn from someone who's already accomplished what it is you want to achieve. So what they're saying to their younger self is, don't just get started right. Because if you get started wrong, it could just sputter out and you could just drift away and decide not to follow through. But when you get a mentor, it's a shortcut. Life is way too short to learn all these lessons the hard way, when other people have already learned them and can teach them to you. So I've been mentoring real estate investors for over 15 years now. When someone graduates from my program, they've made over $500,000 in net profits. And so often I ask them, was it worth it? And they always say, are you kidding me, Phil? It's the best financial decision I've ever made in my life. Look where I am right now. Look how much money I have. Look how much knowledge I have. Look at what I've acquired. And it's because they've taken a massive shortcut. So get a mentor. By the way, you can apply to be my next apprentice right up here, and there's also going to be a link at the end of the video too. But get a mentor so that when you get started right. Or maybe where you are right now is halfway through. Okay? Maybe you are in your 40s right now and you're thinking, I wish I would have gotten started 20 years ago. Well, if the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago, the next best time is right now. So, get started and get a mentor. So you get started right. So you skip all of the painful lessons that you'd have to learn the hard way. Take shortcuts in life. Life is short. All right. Number 2, get a mentor. Now we're dropping down to number 3. What do you think is the number 3 answer to the question of what advice you'd give to your younger self? Acquire more rentals. You know, time flies, and the future is here before you know it. And if you devour everything you earn, then when the future does arrive, you have nothing to show for it. So what this advice people are giving to their younger self is saying is, along the way, you need to accumulate some real estate assets that you don't sell. Now, this is easier said than done because it's really easy to make mistakes with rentals. To acquire those that take up all your time, produce no cash flow, give you all kinds of headaches, and it creates misery. I've got a great playlist on a series of videos on owning rental properties the right way. So you do have to acquire them strategically because ultimately what this advice is saying is you've got to hold on to them. You can't sell them all. Yes, you do need to flip properties, right? Because you need to create the cash so you can buy more rentals. And you need to be able to pay your bills, and you want to be able to go on vacations, you want to be able to spend time with your kids. So you need to create money in the present, but you also have to be acquiring some long-term rentals so that down the road you're sitting on enormous amounts of equity and have great cash flow. And that can happen, but you do have to do it right. And it's such great advice because, again, some people look so short-term. And the future does get here eventually, right? And as you get older, what you'll discover, the older you are, the more time flies. When you're younger, okay, and you're 20 years old, and you go to 21, that's 1/20th of your life. But then when you're 40 years old, one extra year is only 1/40th. It's not nearly as long of a feeling. So you need to acquire more rentals. And that is done strategically and carefully. All right, well, there's some other answers that I got, and I'll just throw these out because they didn't encompass. I mean, this really encompassed almost 100% of people's advice to their younger self, but I thought there was a few others that you might like. Focus on your financial life, not your career or climbing that corporate ladder. And this was said in several different ways, but the concept here is a paradigm shift. So often people focus so heavily on climbing that corporate ladder or getting better and better in their career. And oftentimes they do. When you get into your late 40s and your early 50s, you're kind of at the peak, right? You've got it all dialed in. But the problem is if you didn't focus on your financial life all along the way, then what you may have is, sure, you might have some in a retirement account and you might be earning a lot of money, but you haven't built the freedom that comes with focusing first and foremost on your personal financial life, not on building up that shareholder value. And so I thought this was a great one to add. And this is something I've done ever since I was 22 years old. Right? I didn't worry about building up somebody else's business. I worried about building up my own personal financial life. Here's another one. Stick to it. Don't get distracted. Read quite a few in that similar theme, whereby they did get started early in life and they did probably get a mentor. At least they got a lot of good education. But somewhere along the lines, they got a little distracted. And 1 year turned into 3 years, turned into 5 years. And now all of a sudden they look back and they said, I wish I would have done more of that. I wish I would have spent less time with the career and more time building up my rental portfolio and doing more house flips. My goodness, I would have been so much better off. So yeah, stick to it. This is a tried and true formula. It's going to work today, tomorrow, next year, 10 years from now. Continue in real estate investing. Continue your plan. Don't allow other distractions to get you away from that because, again, the future is going to be here before you know it. Don't lease space, own the building. I read several of these people that started their own small business, and maybe it was pretty successful, but they leased the building or they leased the space to which their business was operating. And in the end, they look back and go, that was stupid. I should have owned it. Now, I know that there's a different discussion on whether you should lease or own a primary residence, and I know for anybody that bought any properties the last couple of years, it's been a huge home run to buy and own a primary residence, but sometimes that calculation changes. But when it comes to a small business, and you're leasing space, own the building. Because sometimes businesses go obsolete. Sometimes businesses go out of business that were really good at one point and now they're not. Look at Kmart, look at Radio Shack. Okay, things change. But at the same time, if you own the real estate underneath, that's not changing. That's always going to be needed. Even in today's world, where there's a lot more vacancy for strip centers and other office space, there's still use for that real estate. I read an article this morning about Florida is looking to pass some new legislation to make it easier for strip centers to be used for residential. So when giving advice to your younger self, you're going to be telling that younger self, don't lease the space, own that building. And this one's a little humorous. It basically said, don't leave finances up to what will be your ex-husband. So the idea that you've got to take control of your own financial life, even if you're married. And I think it's also stretches to the idea of who you take financial advice from. Look, you take it from people who are already financially free. Take it from the people who are already successful. They're the ones that can give you advice that makes the most sense financially. I have been giving advice for a very long time on YouTube, and you can look back to videos 5 and 10 years ago, and much of the wisdom that I shared there is still applicable today. It's self-evident that what I teach you is authentic, it is accurate, it is truth, and it's going to help you be more financially successful. So follow what I'm sharing with you and others that you find that are in the same, cut from the same cloth as me, have an enormous amount of experience and have made an enormous amount of money and have a great life. Listen to those people as it relates to finances. Well, I'm Phil Pustiowski with FreedomMentor.com, and I would love for you to share what your advice to your younger self would be, different from what we see here in this list. Please share that. I'm sure not only me, but all the others that are going to read the comments would love to hear that. And if you would like to learn how to become a successful real estate investor, and this is all brand new to you, first and foremost, get a free copy of my best-selling book, How to Be a Real Estate Investor. I give it away for free on these videos. And if you want to get a mentor, if you want to shortcut your path to success, consider my Apprentice Program, where my team and I, we will guide, train, we will turn you into a money-making machine. We will shortcut all of those hard learning lessons because life is too short. All right, y'all. Well, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you on the next one.